Welcome back. This is part 2 of What If Amy and Sonic Swapped Roles? If you missed the first part, the link will be below, if not in a playlist link, so don't worry too much about that. I do recommend you go check it out. I spent a lot of time and effort on it, even if it is a shorter part. And again, playlist link later for anyone who needs to catch up. So, hey, we left off with the ending of the classic era though, so while not much had changed, the differences just from their role swap alone already made some impacts. From Metal Amy instead of Metal Sonic to a changed mural that now reflects a pink hedgehog. And this part, well, you see the differences grow in severity and strength as we enter the adventure era of games. And thus, a change in designs too. Funnily, everyone keeps the same designs going into this. Amy keeping her red dress to show her love and care for all, with its flowy nature still embodying her freedom and her loving spirit that this swap got her. Sonic, too, doesn't also change. He's still the free-loving blue blur, though this last part should have made that obvious, at least. And with that, we can get started. Alright, so first we have the time skip. Like normal, Tails makes his lab and sets it up in the Mystic Ruins area. But also, he would be pushed more by Amy to explore his passions, even getting more used to his tech and upgrading the pedal to the Sakura pedal early for Amy. This essentially being her Tornado 2, but a more fitting name. She also would have pushed for Tails to get more schooling around Station Square, but this would affect little for now. We'll get more into that later. Sonic, meanwhile, would be exploring around the areas as normal, separated from the group, but still holding on to the promise he made to Amy to meet again, and maybe even have another race. And Amy herself? In canon, she moved to Station Square before the events of SA1 for ambiguous reasons, and ended up figuring it would be boring in the end. And seeing her more free nature here, she'd be merely renting a house there and spending more time with Tails and exploring around it for the purpose of this what if. And her new freedom and adventurous streak changes this slightly enough to have a very big effect, as it leads her to finding a family of birds, Birdie and their family, early, along with the Chaos Emerald they had. And, taking it without issues with the caring nature she has, she would bring it to Tails' lab to be safe, along with Birdie and their family to be closer by. This means Birdie and their family are going to be fine through SA1. Everyone else is in the same places, but this does leave a big question for a certain someone later. We'll get into that. And in the end, let's see how things change quite noticeably. Or rather, how events start weirdly the same as they do in canon, with Sonic jumping around Station Square,
This is happening.
and Chaos Zero being unleashed from the Master Emerald and causing havoc. Sonic goes to help, only to find that he can't do anything to the monster, and then Eggman descends from the egg carrier flying over the city, and ordered Chaos to retreat for now. He's sure he knows where 3 of the Chaos Emeralds are. Sonic, hearing this and seeing the Doctor, screams at Eggman to give him a chance, but he merely unleashes a gas similar to the moment in canon at Twinkle Park, making Eggman's escape towards Tails' lab all the easier. Sonic, after recovering from this, goes to track down Eggman, but Well, before we continue with that, we need to cut around some. What is going to happen with the E-Series units? Well, without Birdie's family, the E-Series now use a different animal to power them. Or rather, creature. The Chow. The events with them are going similarly. However, Amy isn't the one attacked now by Zero. Sonic is, being captured by the same robot as did in canon originally later, but now much earlier. Zero also, for the purposes of this, would be holding a Chow inside them because, again, no birds. Now cutting to Tails' lab, he's going over the upgrades to the Sakura pedal to Amy that he's made, and how it now even uses a Chaos Emerald. Amy remarks how this means they have 3 total and might as well get the other 4 at this rate just for safekeeping when they hear a loud noise approaching from outside. They exit to the same fight in SA1, and that goes about as normal as always. Eggman always was going to lose there. Turns out having your robot hornet thing go plummeting into the ground, even though it was made to kill hedgehogs, is only going to land it as a planted seedling for it to be destroyed. However, Tails is attacked by Chaos right as their battle finishes. Amy begins to run over as Eggman uses this distraction to grab the Chaos Emerald from Birdie off of Amy, similar to how he did Tails in canon, but now with a lot more believability as Amy would have her back turned and not realize what's going on. Combined with Chaos stealing the Emerald off of Tails personally this time, and Chaos 2 forms much earlier than expected. However, Eggman wisens up. There should have been 3 Chaos Emeralds in the vicinity. He looks around before deciding that they can worry about that 3rd one later, figuring it too much of a hassle to get at the moment. Besides, he had already detected more Chaos Emeralds now in Station Square, ordering Chaos to come with him as they return to it. We now cut back to Sonic, in the same cell Amy was as in canon, being watched over by none other than Gamma. He's trying to understand what Eggman's up to and could easily and effortlessly break through the cell door, but he's intrigued by the robot keeping an eye on him. Gamma and Sonic actually are maintaining a sort of conversation, Sonic talking about how he's always ending in situations like this, and Gamma actually being intrigued by Sonic's past. Eventually, however, this leads to a realization about Gamma by Sonic as he catches a glimpse of what lays in the robot's core. You know, Eggman normally uses animals to power his machines, but I can tell what you're using is something special. I feel sorry for it in there. Gamma inquires further, and Sonic points out that he knows what Chow are like, and he can tell there's one inside Gamma through the roboticized circuitry. If anything, it seemed to Sonic they weren't originally made for Chow, but that didn't matter now. Gamma is now fully perplexed and asks multiple questions, including what about his brothers in the E-Series. If Eggman's using a Chow to power you, odds are all of them are torturing their inhabitants. Sonic rambles on more and more about Chow livelihood, but Gamma is processing everything and tuning him out, and ends up coming to the same realization he does in canon. He frees Sonic himself as they both go to fulfill their new purposes. Sonic tries to figure out and stop whatever the water monster was that Eggman had, and Gamma now is set on freeing his brothers by freeing the Chow. Sonic quickly realizes the predicament he's in, being stuck on the now launching egg carrier, while Gamma quickly begins to fulfill his events in canon and free his brothers. Amy, for her part, fulfills the role Sonic once did in canon as well, even fighting Knuckles in the Mystic Ruins and Chaos 4 in the process, before having a sibling-like bickering match with the Echidna that's broken up by Tails setting them straight. They then proceed to setting up a raid on the egg carrier to get back the emeralds finally. As for the emerald from Twinkle Park, Eggman got on his own, fleeing back to Station Square earlier, so he won't be needing to use the gas there this time. Not that we haven't already used the gas to begin with. This all converges with all of them except Knuckles on the flying ship, including Big, who realizes Froggy's been kidnapped by an E-Series unit, though not Gamma this time, thanks to the plot speeding up. Gamma specifically actually caught Eggman's attention on the ship, and almost led Eggman to eradicating him, until he saw that Gamma was acting on his own and was very intrigued, and more annoyed that the blue blur was freed once again. Before he could get ahead of himself, however, he tries to set Gamma a mission to kill Amy Rose. "If you do this, you'll surely be the pinnacle of my creations," he blusters, and the robot sadly takes the order. It is hard for him to overcome his programming, even with this new directive. The fight ends up happening on the ship deck as normal, and Amy is fighting Gamma confused. Right before she could finish off Gamma with her hammer, however, she knows the same thing Sonic did, now seeing more of the opened up robot. Gamma's being piloted by a Chow, and finds it awful that Eggman would stoop so low, especially for creatures she finds so cute and adorable. She then openly questions what of the other creatures Eggman is willing to torture, and this gets Gamma to speak up to the girl, telling her of his new directive he originally had to free his brothers from their containment by Eggman. This leads to young Hedgehog sparing Gamma, similar to canon but with no interruptions, and moving to find the Doctor and Chaos before it's too late. While all this is happening, by the way, Sonic just ends up falling off the ship and plummeting into the Mystic Ruins, where he has a similar enough arc to canon there. Finally, Amy approaches the nearly finished God of Destruction, Chaos 6, and fights against it, bouncing Eggman's bombs back at it with her hammer because Eggman will never not be self-destructive. And then afterwards, they flee the now crashing ship that Amy and all the chaos has caused, Big escaping on the Sakura pedal, though not wrecking it this time. This leads to Amy actually falling into the Mystic Ruins behind Sonic and having her arc be more similar to Sonic's than what was in canon. Talking with Tikal, however, and hearing her wishes to seal Chaos again, she goes against it. She actually thinks there may be some good in this water monster, as she feels something off about all of this. And in the process, perfect chaos is formed. The Water Biollante himself destroying all of Station Square, and Amy vows to find a way to defeat yet spare the now completed God of Destruction. All of their friends gather the now darkened Chaos Emeralds, seemingly lacking any power, allowing Amy to go Super Amy for the first time in her modern appearance, in spite of them losing their luster. And in the end, SA1 ends on a similar note to canon, but now with Amy showing the Chow that were used to make up the E series, including Gamma, who's now also passed, all living in peace with society, allowing Chaos and Tikal to ascend together to a peaceful afterlife, finally. After all of this has transpired, Amy is dubbed the hero of Station Square by its people, and even hero of the world by a select few. She's showered with love and praise, yet her apartment was destroyed, leaving her effectively homeless. She could move to Central City, finally, which she had thought about, but she doesn't want to leave Station Square in ruins. And not only that, but she actively helps in and starts up a rebuilding campaign to restore Station Square to an even better state than it once was. This gets a shrug out of Sonic, who just doesn't understand the girl and darts off to another solo adventure on his own. Meanwhile, Knuckles returns to his duty of guarding the now restored Master Emerald, and Tails is getting to work on repairing the Sakura pedal to full effectiveness, even with Big using it to escape and having less damage this time. It still is slightly damaged enough to where Tails would want to repair it. Though he doesn't stop there. He also gets the idea to make a mech based off the Sakura pedal, which is definitely not foreshadowing for SA2. I don't know what you're talking about. Also, I skipped over it, but Tails still had his whole storyline of saving Station Square from the missile, just that was all very sped up. It would have been around the Twinkle Park emerald stealing that Eggman did. And I didn't really have anywhere to put it, as it wasn't too important to the what if, but it also needed to be mentioned that Tails still had his own breaking free moment, because that is something very important to Tails' character. And with that, SA1's part of the story comes to a close, and hearts had been opened. I do want to focus some on what happens after first, however. First off, I want to talk about Eggman, who wouldn't have had the second egg carrier destroyed by Perfect Chaos properly, as he wouldn't even have had time to launch it. He only ever used the first one in this what if. So, there's actually that change there, for one. And this means it'll actually be even more easy for him in the future, though that'll only come in handy for when we get around to a certain game showing what it's made of. But before we get ahead of ourselves, we then have to focus on the rebuilding process itself, as it would be slow. There's a lot of side character arcs and stuff in SA1 that SA2, funnily enough, lacks. And probably for the better, if you ask me, but at the same time, I still would like to mention that in the end, a lot of these characters do end up surviving and ending up helping Amy in the reconstruction process. The reconstruction process taking months, but in the end, it is finished. We will focus on that in the next part, however. After all, next time we talk about this what if, it'll be time for us to live and learn. Thanks so much for watching this. I really hope y'all like this part, and things are about to get a lot crazier from here. If you liked it, or even just excited for where the story's going, please do the YT things like yada yada, sub, hype. You know the drill. I don't like shoving it down people's throat, even though I should. I really liked how this part turned out. And I'm hoping to do a lot more very soon besides just this what if. Streaming, for instance. I want to do more of that. But there is a lot more to this what if coming up that I hope you're all very excited for. I have a lot of plans of not only SA2, but especially going forward as some major changes happen. But with that's more or less the end of the video. As always, I hope you have a good day, night, week, year, whatever. And I hope to see you all again sometime soon.